Welcome back, everyone, to a very exciting episode of Advanced RC Adventures. This is a channel where we investigate, explore, build and explain, upgrade, and advance Nitro RCs to another level. Come start another adventure with me. So what you have in front of you, approximately a 23-year-old Nitro RS4 2. Yes, this started out life as a ready-to-run RS4 2 HPI. It has many upgrades, and I've had this car from new in box to today. This was, I believe, it was my very first Nitro. It's what made me fall in love with the hobby, and when I fell in love with touring cars, especially 10 scale. Now, of course, there are still some stock features to this car left, but there aren't many. This is what I would consider, with all the option parts, a raceable RTR or kind of an extreme basher situation. You're gonna notice that when I go through the RS4s that I have, they are all built in a sense to drive and to withstand potential crashes. Part of what I mean by that is that on all of my RS4s, I still use plastic or the upgraded graphite arms, control arms. Another interesting and fun kind of thing is that this is the original chassis. Notice, of course, over 20 plus years we have scratches here and there, especially at the toes, what I call at the front, and some at the rear. But honestly, I've seen some RS4 chassis that have been destroyed, and I'm pretty I don't know if I want to use the word proud, but it's a really fun kind of thing to know that this particular RS4 is 20 plus years old, and it's in the condition that it is. Of course, I really enjoy these cars, and so I take care of them. And there's been a number of different changes and upgrades to this car throughout the years, as you can imagine. So on this particular video, we're going to do kind of an overview of what I call the purple RS4. And I'll point out some things that maybe you saw in that last fun and short video that was more like a montage. That was a refresh from a few years ago of this particular car. And it was every, I don't know, it depends on how much I run the cars and what other projects I have for the hobby, but every maybe 3 to 5 years I do full teardowns of the cars and replace bearings, replace or fix parts that are needing to be fixed or replaced, and just do a full refresh on them, make them as new as possible. So let's go over the engine here. This engine is an OS 15 CVR. It's a bump start. Notice there's no pull start. We have a lightweight Robertson Racing flywheel there. I purchased this engine from a local hobby store in 2006. It's now 2023. And we're still using the original piston and sleeve. There's been some, other things like bearings and things that have been replaced. That's another thing I'm pretty proud of for engine maintenance, for engine longevity, to be able to have a running engine for that long. I do have some sense of pride and accomplishment of that, but it's not 100% perfect. I'm sure that it's going to need a piston and sleeve, a rod, and bearings soon enough. The one thing that it will need is a carburetor. On the last refresh, I did take it all apart and replace seals, but since then, of all things to break, the idle adjustment screw has broke off. I don't think you're going to be able to see it, but it has broken off. And it's at the point where it needs to be fully replaced. That screw either needs to be taken out and the body probably needs to be replaced, but I actually have a brand new in-package OS carb slide for this engine, and that's what will be put on to the car. So we have a GPM HPI purple upper deck. We have front belt tensioner, one of the very first, I think, upgrades that people put on to these cars. Down below here, GPM steering rack. This has been rebuilt many times throughout the years with new bearings. They come with plastic bushings, and you can replace them with bearings, and that's what I do for all the cars. This is a piece of carbon fiber with some brass, I guess I'll call them bushings inside. Those wear out over time, and those need to be replaced. Some of the, in my opinion, some of the best towers for these cars are Team Blue Star. Outside of the HPI stuff, Team Blue Star makes some great towers. Let's look at the back. Here's the back tower. We have sway bars. The HPI sway bars came in 3 different flavors, a light, medium, and hard. On this particular build right now, we have a light in the rear and a green version, which is the medium. Purple is the hard. On builds that I've done recently, like within the past 10 years and within the past year, I tend to prefer to use the harder ones, the purple ones. But this is, being how old and how long I've had this car, there's still, of course, updates. But you're going to notice there are some more old or vintage kind of style things as well to it. One being hardware. Let's flip this back over again. Take a look at the engine screws right now. So to keep the look, this particular one, I still have M3 but pan head screws, and yes, they get shaven down and you got to replace them. It's just something, I don't know, it's something that I've done and I want to keep. Now you're going to find out on other builds in the future that I don't do that. I use stainless steel hex button head screws for most all of my engine mounts now. But this particular one, that's how I have it. We have this is a V2 Ron Paris, and it's the same thing as the OFNA ribbed pipe, but this is a version 2. You saw on the Mantis in previous videos, you saw an original V1 Ron Paris pipe. Well, this is a V2. And they came in a couple different colors. This obviously was polished silver, and it works very well. It's a great combo with this OS 15 CVR. This 15 CVR, in my opinion, with driving all kinds of RS4s throughout the years, all different kinds of power plants from 18 CVRs to 12Vs, this is a great balance for the drivetrain and power and speed. I've been able to get this particular car to go the same speed as an 18 CVR, as well as an updated, HPI T3.0. But of course, it doesn't have the same displacement, so the torque is a little bit lower, but it's still able to go the top speed. This is, of course, not a traditional header, and it's a relatively long header. The header itself actually goes down into here, then it goes into that V1 pipe. So because of the design of the header though, it puts it right on, touching almost this race fuel tank, which was an upgrade for these cars. It's a really, really nice upgrade. If you have an opportunity to get the race fuel tank, it's worth it. The reason why is the design. Yes, it does have a little bit different look, but where the pressure port and the outlet and the way that the inside is designed, it helps that when pressure comes from the exhaust and goes in there, it helps to more evenly distribute that pressure, and so it doesn't bubble the fuel tank as much. And those bubbles can be bad because they can get into your fuel inlet line, and then you can have some pockets of lean situations going into your car because you have pockets of air. But let me go back to what I was saying here. So this is a piece of thermal wrap like you would find on normal full-scale car headers and exhaust, and it's been replaced from time to time. But when I didn't have this on the first run, I noticed that the fuel tank itself started to like bow from heat, and so this has been on, gosh, for 20 something years. I mean, not this exact piece, but I've been doing this on this particular car, and it saved this fuel tank, and it works great. Just a little bit of wrap. Sometimes, you know, it gets frayed, as you can see here on the side. Just trim that off, put a new piece on when you need to, and it's good to go. We're running contact foams. We've got 26s on the front, and this particular one we have, I'm pretty sure they're 30 wides, and I'm pretty confident. A lot of times I write what they are on the inside of the wheels I'm looking, but I'm pretty sure they're 35 shore front and back. And man, tires are a whole nother conversation. I have different shores, different widths, different diameters that I turn for the cars for different reasons. Maybe we can have a segment into tires alone and about shore values and how it works and doesn't work for 10 scale touring, in my opinion. So, but both of these are 35 shore front and back. Another big upgrade are shocks. These threaded aluminum HPI version shocks. They are great. They're fully customizable inside, Teflon pistons, replaceable diaphragms, and because they're threaded, easily able to adjust either ride height, but more importantly, chassis tweak. Chassis tweak is a whole, again, just like tires, another topic for another video, which I'm excited to share with you guys on my perspective, my experience and opinion on chassis tweak and why it's important, and how it can help your particular car handle well. And there's a big, I don't know, thought and discrepancy and misnomer on, they have to, for example, your threaded your spacing between your collar and your shock cap has to be the same. For example, you'll put on like the stock C-shaped shock or spring spacers, and there's a wrong thought, an old thought, a bad thought that they have to be the same on both sides. Well, that puts the same amount of force onto the spring, but really, when you think about the whole entire car, there's it's unevenly weight distributed, and so you're not gonna have an even amount. Tweak station setup boards and things of that nature are an old thought, and people of course still use them today in formal racing, but it's such an imperative thing, even for your street bashers, to have some way to set up your suspension, get the tweak out, and have a perfectly planted and balanced chassis when you're driving 50, 60, 70, mile an hour, and be able to hug that turn and not spin out and fly off into a curb or into the grass or something. But again, we're not going to go on depth on that, but it's just another great topic. We have a piece of carbon fiber. You're going to see a lot of this. This is Velcro. You're going to see a lot of Velcro on my front bumper. This is where I place my speed meter, my GNSS speed meter. It's a great spot that I use and feel for the RS4s because it's out of the way. It doesn't get in the way of a body, and there's not a ton of spots else to put your speed meter. You could put it other places, but this is what I choose. So you're going to see a lot of these Velcro pieces on the front of the cars. We have MIP, silver, chrome CVDs. There are heavy duty outdrives, and on the larger majority of my RS4s, I still use the stock bevel gear, but there's a way to set up your diffs for longevity. There's a specific type of grease and how much, and I've had great life out of these bevel gears, and honestly, they're more durable than the ball. They're not adjustable, of course, for slip if that's important for some kind of track setup. Generally speaking, you don't really need it. I have ball diffs, of course, on some of the RS4s, and we'll show that and we'll talk about the pros and the cons. But you cannot beat the durability, the reliability of these stock bevel gear diffs. And set them up right, put in some really good bearings throughout your entire chassis, shim things where appropriate and needed, and they last forever. And there's not much more to say about that. The bevel diffs for HPI are almost bulletproof, as long as you maintain them just like anything. Let's keep looking around the chassis. We've got another vintage SR3000 Spectrum 2.5 gigahertz. This car went through a lot of different types of servos throughout the years. Right now, we have a Futaba 3004. So this is the ball bearing version of the 3003, and it's barely enough torque and speed. But for this particular car, it's just enough. Yes, when this servo goes out, it will be getting something more appropriate, similar to what we have here for steering. I am a huge JR Racing fan, and this is not the first servo that will be on this car, but it is more than likely the last. So what we have here, we have a JR Racing Z9100S. This is the high-speed digital, now vintage servo, and it's one of the fastest standard size servos, especially for the time, but still today. It's not brushless, it is cordless, and the Protex that I run on the newer builds are very, very similar. But the speed at, let's see, at 6 volt, I'm trying to remember, at 6 volt, I think it's 0.05 or 0.06 at 60 degrees. And they're so fast, and for 10th scale, I learned a long time ago in my 10th scale carpet racing days that because you're not dealing with a ton of weight on your cars and you want more speed on your 10th scale touring cars than torque, mainly because they don't need super high torque. What you want is your super speed so that you can be nimble and get in and out of turns and have ultimate kind of road feel of your car when you're driving it with your radio. And that might be another topic too we can dive in. You may notice here that the linkage, the servo horn, and the throttle and brake linkage is different than what you may have saw on that montage, and it is. So recently, I think it was maybe last fall, not too long ago, about 6 months ago, I did an update to this, to a servo, this style servo horn and link setup. And this is actually, I don't know if people know this or not, and there's not too many available today, but HPI made a conversion kit for slide carbs, and this is a portion of that slide conversion kit, and it works so great. It comes with a spring, but this is not the spring that comes with the kit. And but this is the basic kind of setup. You have to do a special bend here on the throttle link. Works awesome. So now let's talk about maybe one of the most popular upgrades options for the RS4, and that's the 2-speed transmission. I can't tell you how many people still today seek the 2 speeds, and why not? I mean, to be able to deliver more acceleration in the first gear and have more top end with the second speed, and be able to hear the engine tone change with that gear change, it's amazing. It's so fun. And what we're running on here though is we have a 44 spur and we have a 39 spur for second gear, and I believe we're running a 13 first gear pinion and I think it's a 20 or a 21 pinion on the clutch bell for the second gear. We're going to dedicate a video to tearing apart and talking about these 2-speed transmissions in full, so that if there's folks that have not yet seen these transmissions, or that they do and they know that they love them, or maybe there's someone that's new into the vintage RS4s and they just need some insight. That's what that video is going to be. It's going to be full in depth, replacing second gear clutch bell bearing, etc. Talking about the 2 different versions that came out, the different gearing packages that came out. We're going to geek out together on that too. Our HPI version gear stiffener and belt tensioner. We have, I don't know if we can see it here, but we have our purple GPM vintage 18 tooth pulleys. We have 2 on the outside. There's 1 down below for the center main belt, and we have 1, I don't know if we're going to be able to see it. We have 1 down in here too. GPM purple Y brace. Robinson Racing brake in here. This had 2 different versions. When we talk about brakes, whether they be Robinson Racing carbon fiber disc brake, which is the updated version, and they're still very good for these cars. We'll talk about the 2 different versions that Robinson Racing came out with. So this is such an exciting thing to talk about. This is my passion of the hobby. I have other cars. I have other Nitro and RCs, but this is it. This is the car that started it all for me. And honestly, this is the car that probably started it all for a whole generation of people that are around my age and maybe a little bit older and slightly younger. But this was our kind of gateway drug into the hobby. Made us fall in love with the hobby itself and with these cars. There's so many people still today that seek these cars out, rebuild them, still seek parts out for these cars, and they're amazing. There's not a car out there today, and hasn't been since this era, that's been a better club racer that could also be formally raced, but not a ton of them did. There was a lot of club racing with these. especially before cars like the R40 came out. This is what we raced. But there's no other car in the past 20-something years that has had more upgrades available, more updates available from so many hundreds of manufacturers around the world made parts for these cars. And they're actually absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. This is a real car, scaled car, in my opinion. The shaft-driven cars that came out later are just not the same. They don't have the same weight balance potential throughout the car that makes this a great race car, whether it be formally or for club. The shaft cars don't have that. We're going to talk about weight bias of the car. We're going to go through later videos on how to take the cars and whether you have threaded adjustable shocks or not. We're going to talk about suspension tweak, how to take care of that, load distribution. So much more fun, so much fun coming up talking about these cars. So, but it involves you as a community too. The plan is not to take apart these running built cars unless there's something in the future. For example, like the engine might have to come out of here and the carb is going to need to be replaced. This can be a teardown video looking at this 2006 purchased and installed engine. Take a look at the piston and sleeve, do a refresh on it. That can be a video for sure. But there's components on here that I'm not going to be taking off. So the community involvement, it comes from you. Is if there's something on a particular car that we go through, we do overviews that a large majority of people want to see, and I don't have a spare for that particular part, then maybe we will break in and dive into a part off of one of these cars and use it as a learning tool, learning segment for everybody. So once again, this is my passion. It's a lot of people's passion. 10 scale touring. How can you not love it? This is scaled motorsports at its best. I still build these as brand new today in 2023. And so many of you guys do too. Thank you so much for allowing me to share this with you. And we've got so much more to do, so much more to come on the channel. So if you love, if you even like, if you think that you might enjoy 10 nitro and especially touring cars, then this is the place to be. And thanks for taking the adventure with me.